name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Maybe you've read some of Daniel Borstein's books. In one of his books, he has a chapter called The Lost Art of Travel. And in that chapter, he talks about how very different travel is now when we tend to travel for amusement than travel has been through most of human history, when people traveled because they had to, or perhaps in rare occasions they traveled for adventure. He reminds us that the Old English noun travel was once the same as the word travail. And we know that travail means trouble. For most of human history, to travel was trouble. It was difficult. If you went by sea, you faced dangerous storms and the perils of shipwreck, as happened to our patron St. Paul. And if you went by land, they were bandits. It was 1,000 times worse than the road to Celaya. If you were lucky enough to find a Motel 6, you shared a bed with 7 people and many vermin. Disease was prevalent. There were no antibiotics. A bout of Moctezuma's revenge could finish you off. We feel like that already. Imagine no antibiotics. And if you did arrive at your destination, you might never leave. You might never get home again. So travel once entailed a bit of commitment. Traveling changed travelers. They were not the people they had been before they embarked on the journey. And some of you who have been in San Miguel for a while know that you can't go home again. You wouldn't quite fit in. I had some dear friends, Carolyn and Philip Thresher. I can tell this story on them because they have both departed this life. But I knew them in Santa Barbara, and they had worked for the World Bank for 30 years in Tanzania. And then they'd come back to Santa Barbara, where Carolyn had grown up. And they were different. They never bought a television. They were completely befuddled by any references to American culture before 1960. And when you went to their house as a cocktail party guest, they made you play the same parlor games that amused them on the African savannah. Lovely people, a little strange. They just didn't quite fit in. I've been receiving emails from a couple who have lived for a while on the Palestinian side of the Israeli security wall. They have a ringside seat on annexation in the West Bank. It's fascinating to read their perspective on the attitudes of Palestinian Christians, particularly toward Christians in the U.S. Tourists don't generally get up close and personal in that way. Tourists want creature comforts. I remember when the Conrad Hilton opened in Istanbul, and I was traveling from Adana in the eastern part of the country to Istanbul. I decided I'd stay at the new Hilton, which was advertising, "Each of our hotels is a little America." And apart from a couple of Keelan throw pillows, it was Main Street Disneyland. I only stayed there once. So Isaiah and Matthew ask us today about the quality of our earthly pilgrimage. Are we travelers or are we tourists? The word spirituality often serves as shorthand for warm sentiment, a fuzzy feeling, a feeling that there's probably something special about life, which may or may not involve God. In fact, it's probably better if it doesn't involve God. because God brings you into contact with institutions and traditions and history and demands on your life, whereas spirituality makes us sensitive and curious and creative and open to life's numinous qualities, which is not a bad thing. But Isaiah and Matthew seem to be pushing us for more today. Faith is more than sentiment. It is more than heightened experience. Isaiah and Matthew want gritty engagement. In Matthew's gospel, we are told that we are salt. That image is given to us in the context of the Sermon on the Mount. Now, the people who were listening to the Sermon on the Mount had to climb the mount to get there. They were already committed, just as you are already committed if you showed up on church on a Sunday morning. You are the salt of the earth, he says to them, and also to us. You may be more than you realize, Jesus says to us. You are in the process of actualization. You have a vocation that is being formed within you. You have a function in this world. You are to bring savor to this world. My dad salted everything before he tasted it, which infuriated my mother. The man salted his beer. We're told not to do that anymore. Stay away from salt and snack foods and hidden potassium. Salt is powerful and dangerous, and the Surgeon General tells us so. But you are salt. Dangerous people. I like salsa ajobado and salsa picante and hot curries and chopped up serranos. You are the spice of the world, Jesus may have said. You are the zest, the sass, the provocation. And I wish I saw more zest and provocation in current spiritualities, in much of current Christianity. Much of Christianity is busy offering uncritical endorsement to prevailing politics and consumerist goals. I don't know about you, sometimes I shrink back from the Christian label. It's hard to get around the Glorieta these days. I usually go to Banquillo, the bank Bajío. So I was standing in a long line for the ATM up at Santander this past Tuesday, and a woman was strangely eyeing me. She was looking at my collar. She said, "Are you a Christian?" I said, "Well, I'm an Episcopalian." "But," she said, "are you born again?" And I became an instant ecclesiastical snob, and I said, "The Greek text actually says born from above." But that didn't matter. She was already telling me what I needed to do to be saved and to become a real Christian, not an Episcopalian. And nothing she had to say sounded very much like Isaiah. A genuine faith, Isaiah said, requires wrestling with the straitened circumstances of others and making ourselves agents of relief. The Christian scriptures aren't meant to be a photor's guide for a pleasant life journey. We're supposed to be salsa, the kind that gets you up at 3 a.m. And to look at whole swaths of the Christian church, you would think Jesus had said, "You are to be the prune juice of the world. You are the sour grapes of the earth." In the 19th century, a fellow named Thomas Brown took his leave from the Shaker religious sect, and he said to its founder, "Your gospel seems to me like a tunnel. The further I travel in, the narrower it gets." The salty gospel opens us to a world of challenge, We have enough tourist spirituality busy with sentiment and self-help and self-satisfaction. That's not what the world needs. There's a place on Orange Grove Boulevard in Pasadena, California, where I used to live. It's called the Valley Hunt Club. And the Valley Hunt Club was founded in the 1800s to go hunting. Now it is known for bridge and dinner parties and cocktails. Also, proudly, as the place where the Rose Parade started. But up until about 1960, they still, I guess out of pride, had hunts once every 10 years. And one of my predecessors at St. Edmund's Church was asked to give a blessing at the hunt. And so he stood up on the platform, this is parish lore at St. Edmund's, and then he decided to act as though it was the blessing of the animals. And he climbed down from the platform and started to pet the hound dogs. And the hound master was pissed. He said, "You never pet hounds. Petting diminishes their instinct. It confuses their sense of purpose." Do you know that the number one problem for the black bear population in Yosemite National Park is tourists who want to feed the bears? And park rangers explain that if a black bear is given domestic food, it loses its desire to forage the mountains for its traditional diet, and the bear becomes a nuisance bear. And some bears become such nuisances that they have to be put to sleep. The purpose of hounds and bears can be thwarted. So can the purpose of a coddled Christian. They become nuisance Christians. Our quest for tourist spirituality can thwart our ability to hunt for the truly sacred and to do the deeds of God in this world. Martin Luther once said that following Christ meant that each of us become in some ways a little Christ in our own lives, fully alive to the presence of God's Spirit in the way that Christ was. And Christ made a lot of trouble. Break yokes, free the oppressed, share your bread, cover the naked. Then you will be called repairers of the breach, the restorer of streets that can be lived in. Faith might not look much like a meditation class or like waving hands at a praise band. It might look more like Palestinian Christians who are pressed between a wall and a desert and complaining about it. Genuine faith challenges our complacency more often than it confirms our opinions. And we are told to be travelers, not tourists, and to understand worship as a catalyst for engagement and right action. It means becoming a sort of Christ and getting in a little trouble by pursuing his views. So don't eat the thin gruel of spirituality. It will ruin you for the hunt. It will make you a nuisance Christian. Isaiah is unsentimental with us. Matthew wants salt. When that woman up at the ATM asked me if I was a Christian, I wish I had said, "I'm not certain I qualify, but I think I've caught the scent." Amen.